Today we'll be doing a valve adjustment on a 2005 Vstrom 1000. So one of the first things that I do, I'll go ahead and I'll remove this center cover here. You got your 2 Allen screws here, then you got 2 of your plastic clips. So basically you're going to push the center pieces in on both sides of there. Pop those, and you want to kind of make sure that when you pop those little plastic pegs out, that don't drop them, because you may never find them again. And here's what it looks like with that plastic gas tank cover off. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do, I'm going to remove the inner fairing cover. There's, I believe there's 7 of the plastic little push clips in here. 1 here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 more on that side. And then after that, we got 2 screws, which are in the little vents. I don't know if I can get enough light in there, you can see them, but anyways, in those little holes right there, there's 2 Phillips screws on or 1 Phillips screw on either side, and we'll be taking those out. Okay, there's a total of 8 of these clips. I forgot about the one back there on that side. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and take this inner cover off. It's been about a year since I had it off, so I can remember all the little tricks to it here. There's one little tab right in this corner here, and there's 2 little clips I remember in here. And there we go. So you got little tabs on each one of these little corners. And then you got these little tabs here that go into here. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to pull the 2 side fairings off. So we got the one, well, first we got to take this one off, and this thing pops off. Then we'll take that one off, this one off, that one off, and then there's a hidden one back here under where we took the inner fairing off, which I'll show you. And these bolts are different on here. The top ones have a little shoulder bolt on them. The bottom one's a little bit fatter. Okay, let's get that hidden bolt out. Alright, so here's our one hidden bolt. Alright. Looks like we should be able to pull that fairing off now. Alright, let's get this side panel removed. So there's one little pin that goes into this. It's on this inner cover here, so you got to take it, kind of push it forward, pop it out. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do, we're going to pull the gas tank off. So we got one 12mm bolt right there. We'll take that one off, and then we'll go to the front of the tank, and we got this through bolt here. So we'll go ahead and we'll take that nut off, slide that pin out of there, and then we'll prop the tank up. We'll take the fuel line off, disconnect the vent hose and the electrical from the fuel pump, and then we'll be able to remove the tank. So remove this 12mm bolt here. This just pops out, and this is actually a prop. Alright, so it takes two 10mm wrenches on this. Alright, so there's a nut on one side. So we'll take that off and try not to drop that down. You probably won't find that either. Pull the bolt out. Now we'll go ahead and prop the tank up. Alright, so we'll take our little part that we took off from here. This is actually, use it as a prop rod. And stick it just like that. Now we get to our fuel line, our electrical connection, and our vent tube. Alright, so first we'll remove the fuel pump electrical here. You can use your finger. I got big sausages for fingers. So I like to use a little screwdriver to press this down, and it should come right off if you can keep that screwdriver in there. So that's taken off there. Next we'll do the fuel line. It's right here. Now for the fuel line, I'm not sure if you can see this or not. There's a little white plastic thing. There's one on each side. You squeeze both of them. And usually I'll push in a little bit and then pull it out. With the camera right here, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to do this. Alright, so that's off. You can see there's not hardly any fuel that comes out. Just a couple little drops. And then on the other side there's a little vent tube going to the tank, and I'm just going to pop that off. Alright, now we can go ahead and pull the fuel tank off. It's always best to try to ride it and get as much gas out as possible. Keep the weight down, but unfortunately I didn't do that. So it makes it a little bit tougher getting off by yourself. Not impossible. Alright, so make sure we got everything disconnected. Go ahead and pull this prop out of there. Grab it from the front. Slide it back. And that's it. Alright, next I believe we'll go ahead and drain the coolant. We'll get the radiator taken off. And that'll be our next project here. Next we're going to go ahead and drain the coolant. I haven't drained the coolant on this one for the year that I've owned it. But yeah, the manual I got offline, it's showing to take this one off. There's supposed to be another one here and something up here, but I believe that's on the older models. So I'm almost positive it's just that one. And this tends to make a little bit of a mess. So be prepared, have some rags. Alright, now when I open up this cap here, it's going to come out hard. If you don't hold a funnel on this, it just kind of squirts right out at you. So next thing we're going to do, we're going to remove the reserve tank and drain that one. So anytime you're working with these hoses, pulling them off, when they've been on there for a while, you're not going to be able to just pull them straight off. Always make sure you can twist it before you try to pull it off, otherwise you can rip the hose. Once you twist it, it'll pull right off. I'm going to add a little bit of distilled water to the radiator just to kind of flush it out a little bit. Alright, so next we're going to go ahead and pull this radiator hose loose here. Again, you don't want to try to pull this straight off unless you had it off recently. Again, we're going to twist it, break it loose. Usually I'll just take this and tighten it back up just so it doesn't fall off. Alright, so next we'll take the other radiator hose off the other side, and then we'll remove some bolts and see if we can get this radiator out of the way. Alright, so we'll pull this upper radiator hose off. Now we have to separate this shield from the radiator, and then the radiator should just come right out. Disconnect probably the horn and a couple connectors also. Let's put one more 10mm bolt right down here. That's going to swing right out of there. Now I want to do a couple electrical connections and we'll get that sucker out of there. Alright, so we're going to go ahead, we're going to disconnect this connector. Push down on this little clip right here. Pull the bottom out like that. I believe this little wire right here, it's not connected to anything, but if I remember right, this is the one that you use if you hook up the factory heated grips. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's what that one's for. Alright, so to get the shroud off, you got a tab here, then one on the other side over there. You push and pull up on it. So do that on both sides, we should be able to remove that shroud. Alright, so the other ones, I'm not sure if we can see it in there or not. So once we do that, the radiator will So once we do that, the radiator should come off there. We'll separate it from the shroud, and there should be a couple electrical connectors to take off. Alright. So once I pop that shroud off, the radiator's still on this pin here, so you slide that off, and it'll fall down, and then the only connector you got to take off from this side is the one from the horn, which goes onto those two little prongs there. Pop that off and the radiator comes right off. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to clean this thing top to bottom. I see a lot of people, they take this stuff off and they don't clean up above it, and then you always got to worry about dirt and stuff dropping into your valve train, your cams and stuff. So, you know, don't be lazy, take your time, clean everything before you remove the valve covers. Okay, so we're gonna, you can leave this shroud there and kind of work around it, but I prefer to take it off myself. So you can either try to disconnect the connectors, which is kind of a pain in the butt, or you can come from this side and you can get you a pair of needle nose and squeeze the little tabs there and just push those through. Then you can, it's a lot easier doing it that way. Okay, and this is what they look like when they pop out. It may be a good idea, you know, so you don't get these in the wrong order when you're putting it back in. You know, use your cell phone, take a quick picture of stuff when you're taking stuff apart, just so you got a quick refresher in case you get busy or it's a week before you get back to it and you can't remember. So remember just to take some pictures. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is going to pull this hose off the, I believe that's the pair valve. can. Alright, so now what we're going to do is pull the spark plug boot off and remove the 2 spark plugs. Again, now that that's removed, I'll clean just a little more. Make sure everything is clean before I remove the spark plugs too. Alright, so now we'll go ahead and pull the front valve cover off. So we've got these 4 6mm Allen bolts. Alright, so with the 4 valve cover bolts loosened up, what I like to do, as you get like about a 10-pound sledgehammer, I whack the crap out of that thing. Nah, just kidding. I use a rubber mallet. Just tap around it a little bit and it'll pop off. You see it loosened up there. The main thing is just go slow when you're taking it off. You don't want to rip that gasket. On this side over here, you got the little half moon gaskets. You got to pop out. Sometimes it's easier to get a little screwdriver to pop those out. And on the valve cover, I don't know if you can see it from there or not. You got these are little gaskets right here. Careful they don't fall off and get in the motor. And there's also one that goes right here, which is on the bottom of this too. Make sure you have all that stuff. Alright, now we get into the valves, we'll pull the inspection plugs out and get the timing set to check these clearances. Alright, so once you get the little gasket off, little half moon thing sitting there, you'll see a little bit of Suzuki bond still in here. Just be careful, try to get all that stuff out of there, don't want to fall in the motor. Alright, so we got this 10mm Allen on this. Alright, so this is where we'll put our ratchet on there. We'll be turning this with a 17mm socket to turn the crankshaft. And this little thing is where we'll look down in there, we'll be able to see our timing marks. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and get these timing marks set up. So basically, I don't know if I'm not sure how the camera's picking it up, but what I'm doing, I'm watching this cam load. This is just to get it close, and then I'll look through the timing inspection hole. So you're going to turn the crank counterclockwise. So we're watching this. If I know the exhaust cam is pushing the exhaust, I know my next stroke's going to be the intake, because I can see the cam pushing down the intake valve. So I'm going to stick this zip tie down in here. I can kind of feel the piston where it's at, whether it's coming up or. Alright, so after it pushes down the intake valve, the next stroke's going to be the compression stroke. We want to top dead center of the compression stroke. Alright, so the piston's coming back up. Okay, so now it's getting pretty close right there, so now I can go ahead and look in my timing hole and look for my timing marks, which says FT on it. Alright, so I'm going to look in the inspection hole. I'm slowly going to rotate this. I need to do another. Oh wait, no, that's it. So there's our timing mark right there. And then we look at the position of the cams. And that's the position of the cams you want on the front cylinder. On the back cylinder, the cams are going to face inwards. So at this point, we can get our feeler gauges out and start checking our specs on the gaps. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and check the valves. So our intakes are different thicknesses from the intake to the exhaust. So I believe the tolerances for the intakes are between 4 and 8 thousandths on these. So what I'm using is go, no-go feeler gauges, which means it's two different sizes. This first part here is 4 thousandths and this second part of it is 6 thousandths. So if the 4 goes but the 6 doesn't, then we know we're, let's see. So it's good on the 4 but no 6. On the other side, if I can see it, we got 4 but not 6. So on this one, I'll probably end up pulling the cam. I like to set them on the looser side, so if I can get it closer to 8 thousandths, I will get it there. So now we'll go ahead and do the exhaust. So we'll start off with a 8 and 10 thousandths. And normally your exhausts are going to get tight before your intakes. Alright. So both of my exhausts look like they're on the tight side. Because I'm not even getting the 8 thousandths in there. So I'm going to go down. We'll see if I can get the 6 in there. Yeah, the 4 and 6, no problem. So our exhausts are definitely tight, so we'll definitely pull those. Alright, so our 2 exhausts are definitely on the, one's on all the way at the limit, one's past the limit. So this one on this side is like at 7 thousandths, with the limit's at 8. And this one is at the limit at 8 thousandths. So the range on that, I believe, is 8 to 12 thousandths. So yeah, we'll definitely pull that one off. This one, they're both at 5 thousandths and the limit's at 4. So we'll go ahead and loosen those up a little bit too. They normally don't move too much, but while you're in there, you might as well just make it right and not worry about it later. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and pull the cams out next. So we got our timing set on our FT marks. And the other thing you can look for, you'll see little notches. I don't know if it's picking it up or not, but those line up with the casing on the head there. There's two little notches, so we can double check all that. And unlike the 650, these have gear driven cams, so you don't have to worry about taking the cam chain off and all that, so it makes it a little nicer. The 650, it's definitely a harder bike to work on. It's not super difficult, but it's just there's a few more steps on the 650s than it is on the 1000. So alright, so you want to make sure you got a clean place to set all this stuff down on, so get you a new rag or paper towels or something like that. Alright, all the bolts are out, so now we're gonna take this cam journal off here. Again, I usually use a rubber mallet, give it a little bit of tap, kind of pull up on it a little bit. There's some locating pins under it, so it's going to have to come straight out. Come on the other side here. There we go. Those are off. One locating pin's in the cam journal and the other one's still in the engine. So we definitely want to look for that. Cam journal off here. And we got both the locating pins in the cam journal on the intake side. And we'll pull that cam out. And while we got them out, make sure you inspect the cams, the cam journals for any wear or any abnormal wear. Check all the inner surfaces. Alright, let's pull these buckets out. When you pull them out, make sure you put them in order. Otherwise, you'll put them back on the wrong one. Take a magnet, put it on the bucket. Slowly come out. Usually the shim will be on the inside if you get the magnet right in the center. And then there'll be a number on that shim. And you'll know which way to go on the chart to check your shim size. So do that to all four of them, put them in order so you don't get them mixed up, and then we'll figure out the shim sizes. When you're pulling these top ones, make sure the shim is in the bucket. You don't want to drop it inside the motor. Alright, so that shim stayed on the valve. And that's okay too. Grab your magnet, grab it, pop it off, set it inside the bucket. Alright, so I got one of the shims out. Now usually there's a number on there to tell you the thickness of it, but a lot of times it gets worn off. So this one's worn off, so we're going to have to use some calipers to find out our specs here. Alright, so this one is a 2.90. Now we need to go to our chart and find out the correct shim size to get it back into the normal range. Alright, so I've got all my new shims in under the buckets. I left this one out to show you here. So basically I'm finding the number on the shim and put that down towards the tappet. Make sure you get oil. Don't be afraid to put a little bit of oil in there. And a little bit of, put some oil on the shim. Put the shim in. A little more oil on top. And get your bucket. Get a little bit of oil inside the bucket. Get some oil on the outside of the bucket. Smear that around. Go ahead and slide your bucket over your shim. And that's it on that. Alright, so the next thing we're going to do is going to reinstall the cams. So, same way as we took them out, we'll put it back in, but what I'll do is I'll put a little bit of moly paste and oil on the cam journals before we put them in. Make sure it's got good lubrication before we start this baby back up later. Alright, so we got our moly paste and oil on our cams. I think you can see it from there. And on the cam journals here. That way we know it's going to be right when we start it up. So we got our first cam in. You know, the first thing I do, you'll look at your lines right here, make sure it's sort of lined up, because it's not going to be perfect. Because this gear, this outer gear, I think it's the outer one. One of them, it's like spring loaded, so it turns a little bit. So once you start tightening it down, you'll see that the timing marks are even with this mating surface, which on the video you may not be able to see, but when you take yours apart, you'll see it. Alright, so we're going to put the last cam in here. So I got my moly paste and oil on all my cam journals. And so the hardest part about this is getting the timing marks lined up. Because it's easy to be one tooth off, because this spring-loaded gear, once you tighten it down, it'll turn a little bit either way. So you got to figure out which way it's going to turn. Like this one, I had to actually turn it, the timing off a little bit, going clockwise like a tooth. Then when you tighten it down, it went back even. So on this one, I guess we're going to find out. Again, I'm looking at my timing marks on the sides of the cams here. Alright. Gonna get just a little more moly on the cam journals here. Throw just a little bit of oil on there too. So we'll try it this way, and if it doesn't work, we'll know which way it goes, and we just pop this back off and turn the gear back the other way. There may be an easier way to do it, but like I said, it's been a while since I've done these kind of cams. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and start cinching down this cam journal here. We won't tighten it up very much, just enough to make sure that the timing marks are going to be right on. And of course we'll use a torque wrench to torque them down to the final specs. And to snug them up just a little bit. Just gets that gear to set. We'll look at it, and it looks like I'm off just a little bit. It actually needs to turn this way. So I'll go ahead and pull the journal back off and we'll try it again. Okay, so we got the cam journal back off. So now what I'm going to take this gear and just move it one tooth counterclockwise. Because the way I set it in there, this mark it actually looks like it's one tooth this way, so it actually has to look like it's one tooth off going the other way. Then when you cinch it down, it'll be correct. Okay, so the two cams are in now. Now I'm going to get my torque wrench and I'm going to torque these down. I believe those are 7 foot-pounds. So we'll do it in of course, a crisscross pattern. We'll torque those two down and then we'll turn the engine over and check our clearances again. Probably do 2 or 3 revolutions. Squeeze out any oil and stuff so you don't get a false reading on the clearance. Alright, so we'll go ahead and torque these down. So I got my torque wrench. This is my smaller one. This is an inch-pound, so it's 7 foot-pounds. So it's 84 inch-pounds. So I'm going to go through and kind of do them halfway first, and then I'll torque them the rest of the way. Okay, so 7 foot-pounds. 7. Alright, so we turn the engine over probably about 3 or 4 times. Now we'll go ahead and check it out. So I got the biggest, like a 13 should not go in here, which it does not. So we'll go down to a 12, which is our limit for the exhaust. The 12 goes in super tight, so it's probably about 11. So we're well within range on the exhaust. So now we'll check the intakes. Alright, so we'll try 8 first. Nothing. Nope. So let's go to 7. Okay, so 7 goes in nice and smooth. So 7 goes in, 8 doesn't, so we're right within limits. So next thing we'll do is go ahead and get the valve cover set up, and we'll get our ultra black. We'll put it on these half moons, and we'll get this valve cover set in there and torqued down. Alright, so we got our sealant on here. We got our gasket back on our valve cover. We got our gasket there. You want to make sure that's got a little bit of oil on that one. So now we'll go ahead and set this on there. go. And we'll put all our little gaskets back on here. And go ahead and put all of our bolts in, and we'll torque this down. This gets torqued down to 10 foot-pounds. So our valve cover is torqued down. You're going to see a little bit of squeeze out of that stuff, and that's good. So the front cylinder is completed. So now